that means that there's certain things that we know what's going on and a number of things that we don't know what's going on, but I've been very happy to speculate about. Regarding what I know, we can confidently say, I look at the historical record. I've been looking at the historical record for a very long time. And very briefly, and I'm not going to belabor this here, we have in the United States a lucky treasure trove of documents that have been released by the government through Freedom of Information. Now, technically speaking, we still have a Freedom of Information Act, but I will just say in practice, it's not what it used to be. And there was a glory era of FOIA, and that was in the late 1970s during the Jimmy Carter years. And it was during that time that we've received more than half of what we have to this day in terms of declassified government UFO documents. More than 50% of what we have today comes from those 4 years of Jimmy Carter. And what we have is pretty amazing. These documents individually do not prove UFOs are extraterrestrial. They don't, not any one of those official documents. However, a couple of things. Collectively, I would say the top 10, top 20, top 50 of those do prove something. They prove that the UFO phenomenon is absolutely real, absolutely serious, has been attracting the attention of the US military and of other militaries around the world consistently for decades. And that these were true head-scratching phenomena that would be tracked by our radar, seen visually by our pilots and military personnel, chased by our pilots. There's no way that we could compete with these things, not the Americans, not the Russians, not anybody. And that has been going on consistently for decades. And as far as we can tell, by the way, that is still going on. Not necessarily through Freedom of Information Act documentation, but through military leaks, let us say good persuasive leaks, and we can maybe talk about that. But basically, the bottom line is there's something going on. "3D printing is a tremendous threat to the world order. In 10 years or more or less, some smart person is going to upload for free their 3D example of their free energy device, their energy harvesting device, guaranteed. There are brilliant people around the world doing this right now. And I don't know that all of the ideas are going to succeed, but I'll bet some of them do. They're going to upload it. And in another decade, you and I and other people may very well have access to sophisticated 3D printing devices that might be able to do the types of energy harvesting devices that can do the job.
So yeah, well, I had a couple of questions, but I think the one that I'd really like to ask the most is, do you think that ET invasion could be the ultimate false flag event?
Great question. I've thought about this so frequently. As I said earlier, I believe we live in an era of false flags. In fact, I would almost say we live in the false flag age now.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's just become. I think you had one in your country not long ago with that hostage situation. I think that it's happening all the time. The ET false flag scenario. I've actually been. I'm not warmed up to that idea. If one is referring to the so-called Project Bluebeam, for instance, which has been a meme for almost 20 years now. The thing is, I've looked into the Bluebeam scenario, and this is the idea that some agency would create there's lots of variations of this, but a holographic projection of ETs or of alien craft, essentially something to terrify the world's population into submitting to a kind of global fascism.
Yeah.
I certainly believe that the goal is to terrify people into creating global fascism. There's no question in my mind that they're trying to do that. But I find it problematic to use the ET phenomenon in order to do this. First of all, unless they immediately either kill or silence every single skeptical scientist, not even skeptical, intensely hostile scientists who are there's a very tall order to convince these people. You might be able to convince some poorly educated, easily frightened, or credible or gullible person that aliens are invading. I don't think you're going to be able to silence an entire infrastructure of scientists who, for decades and generations, have just said this is all bunk.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to roll over that easily. That's one. And secondly, is following up with this. How would the logistics of this would just be nightmarish. Now, of course, they did 9/11 to us, but the ET logistics seem to be vastly more difficult and complex. And if I were in charge of running such a false flag, I'd be in terror of it. I mean, it would be so easy for something to go wrong, and there'd be so many other false flags that would be, I just think, would be easier to do. So I don't really see the logic of an ET false flag. Having said that, if there is ever an ET invasion that we're talked about, you can bet that it's a false flag. You can bet.